Hey everyone, it's John here from Hot Take Hockey, back with another video. I'm here with Mitch Milani from the Bottom Line View. Mitch, he does a lot of football on his channel, but he's always been a big hockey guy. We're getting him here on Hot Take Hockey to preview the Penguins versus Rangers series. Repping a little bit more on the Penguin side, Milani, but maybe I'll fire back some stuff at you for the Rangers. But Mitch, how are you feeling? I mean, thanks for coming on. How are you feeling on this series? What's kind of your vibe on the Penguins Rangers here?
It's not a great vibe, to be honest with you. But bro, I've been on these previews, right?
Yeah.
The last couple of years. And usually I come in with a pretty positive vibe.
Yeah.
This year, it's a really underdog vibe. I'm getting the underdog vibes, which is nice because typically the Penguins aren't an underdog, which might actually be a reason why you should believe in them this year, because maybe there's an extra edge along with kind of this last ride narrative that they might be riding this playoffs.
Yeah.
But the vibes overall are not great just because Pittsburgh has not played their best hockey at the end of the season. Looked like a great team at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, but for whatever reason, they've lost that vibe. So overall, the Rangers are playing better hockey. They are the better team entering the playoffs. But as you know, the playoffs are a new game. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I think I saw someone on TikTok talk about this, and I've talked with a few of my buddies about it. It's like, you look at the Penguins, kind of what you said, like the last few series they've been involved, whether it was like the Islanders series they've been involved in, and then the series against Montreal, like, they're always kind of the favorites. And for the last few times, it hasn't worked out in their favor. How I look at this series and how a lot of other people look at the series is like, you think the Rangers are probably going to win, or like you're looking at the Rangers of like Shesterkin and what he's done this year. And then you're looking at the big guys like Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, like some of these big names, Fox, and just kind of the season the Rangers have had, like this should be their series to win. But like, this is the series for me that also just screams like the fact that so many people have the Rangers winning, and the fact that so many have, like, it just, are we forgetting Pittsburgh? Like, are we forgetting what they have too? So for me, obviously, we talked about it before recording, is like Jari's not there for the first couple of games. That's going to put them behind the 8 ball already. But DeSmith's been a lot better towards the end of the season, like a lot better. Like I think DeSmith was riding like an 880 save percentage for the first few months. And then like lately he's been like actually solid. So if the Penguins can like split the first couple of games, get Jari back, and Jari's playing at least close to the level he was, who knows? But I don't blame you for having that vibe. I don't at all. But yeah, I just look at this series. For me, it's tough. I have the Rangers probably advancing, but it's like, it's that series for me that too many people are putting like all in for the Rangers. And I'm just like, why aren't the Penguins getting enough credit here? Because I could see this series going either way. So Mitch, obviously I just mentioned the goaltending. And I think for me, like the biggest X factor for the Rangers, because their offense has been so confident, and I think their defense has really been developing and really been forming the last couple of years. If Shesterkin's at the top of his game, I think it's going to be really hard for the Penguins to win this series. Like, I think if Shesterkin's even like 90% what he's been, or like 80%, like he's had a couple rough stints here in the last couple of months, but I just think if Shesterkin's on, like, to me, Shesterkin's that kind of guy that can play Vasilevsky level going forward in his career. So I guess for you, when you're looking at the Penguin side of things, obviously the obvious answers are Crosby and Gensel and Gino and stuff like that. Do you have some X factors? Do you have some kind of perspectives here on the Penguins? And then, Malkin, Letang, I'm sure, especially for those two guys, they got it in their head. They're going, is this my last go around, or what's going on? But what do you think?
Yeah. X factor wise, man, that's tough. I mean, the easy answer every year, and I think you know where I'm going with this, it's always Evgeny Malkin. Like, that's always the X factor for me every year, because we know what we're going to get from Sidney Crosby. We're going to get one of the best players still on the planet, both ends of the ice. Yeah. And he's playing at the top of his game right now. Let me tell you, he's playing amazing. But Evgeny Malkin is the guy that injuries, how productive has he really been in terms of his 5-on-5 play? Not quite what he used to be, but he's still good on the power play. Can he find a way to be his dominant self in the playoffs? Because Malkin's extremely slept on in terms of his playoff resume. Very good playoff player. But a lot of when he doesn't show up, that's when the Penguins don't win. Because for the Penguins to go far in the playoffs, they need that two-headed monster to be the way it was in their prime and when they were winning cups. So he's the X factor. But if I were to go alternatively there, I honestly just think it's the defense as a whole, which is kind of a cop-out, but the defense has kind of been shaky, I would say, other than Chris Letang. Chris Letang is, to me, still one of the best defensemen in hockey, but besides
even Letang at some points this season has looked sus defensively. Like, he's put up his numbers offensively 100% and been a difference maker, but even defensively at times he's looked questionable. But I see what you're saying. I mean, Letang, at the end of the day, is a game changer. We know that.
Yeah, no, I know that people criticize him, and honestly, I don't get it, because that guy is like that guy is still incredible.
Oh, he's been the face of the Penguins defense forever.
Yeah, so it's really been his partner. Brian Dumoulin is the guy that's fallen off. So can he be the guy that is that steady force and play the amount of minutes he did during those cup runs? On top of that, Mike Matheson's actually been really good. I love the way he skates. I love the way he transitions the puck.
And that move was heavily criticized at the time, and it doesn't look too bad right now, considering Hornquist hasn't really been like, I don't know, a big side of things.
Well, he's older. That was
kind of the reason for the
something.
move.
Yeah.
That was the reason for the move. But I was also going to say, and I, for the Rangers, it's changed. For the Penguins, it's changed a lot. I mean, Evan Rodriguez was a big story, right? But now they've like spread things out after getting Raquel, and things have changed a little bit. But I just keep reminding myself on, like, because obviously the storyline for the Penguins always is their big names. Like I just talked about it, Crosby, Gensel, Malkin. And then the Rangers, I mean, the easy way to go is Kreider, Panarin, Zibanejad, right? And then even like the newer additions for both teams.
Man. Their defense is strong. I think
their defense has gotten better and a lot better. And and also the newer additions for both teams. Like when I look at the Penguins, I look at Raquel. That's a huge addition. Mm-hmm. For the Rangers, like Andrew Kopp's been so good for them. So I think a lot of that is like the conversation, and obviously Shesterkin. But what is not talked about much, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, is like the bottom six for both teams, which have guys that, like, to me, there's room for like action there. When I look at the Rangers, they've got Lafreniere, Kakko, Filipino, Barclay Goodrow. Like Goodrow, we've seen score big goals in the playoffs, right? Even though he's sometimes questionable, he scored big goals in the playoffs. And Kakko and Lafreniere on the third line, who knows? When I look at the Penguins, a guy that who I mean, I think you could speak on it heavily, and I've talked to other Penguins fans, it's like Kasperi Kapanen has probably been the most inconsistent, like easiest to like go invisible ever. Like there's been points this year where I'm like, is this guy even playing? He's on the line, like I think with Carter, and he's been on the third line. And then you obviously got Evan Rodriguez with Blueger on the fourth. So I'm just like, there's room even for the Penguins bottom six to do something. So I guess kind of what's your mindset there? Because as a Penguins fan, you can definitely speak on a third line showing up big in the playoffs. When we talk, I don't think there's a third line here when we refer to HBK, but I mean,
right,
that can make the difference in a playoff series and in a playoff run, right?
Yeah, and something that does hurt that right now is Jason Zucker is hurt. So like he would probably be on the second line, but that moves players down, right? And that shifts the lineup and the way that your depth operates there. So when you look at the third line, I mean, Jeff Carter last year was like the bright spot of their playoff series versus the Islanders.
Exactly.
He was amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So really if he could be playoff Jeff Carter again, then we're talking about something. Fourth line, I mean, they're solid, but I just don't know how much they have, like, playoff hockey where it's that speed and physicality. I don't know how much they have that on the bottom six, which does concern me, but they certainly have skill. And that's
outside of Kapanen. Kapanen's the only fast guy in that bottom six.
Kapanen he's so weird because I was a huge fan of him when we got him because he's fast. He was scoring, he was making plays. And now I don't know, maybe it's a loss of confidence or whatever, but overall it's just been an inconsistent bottom six, which does concern me, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I do think the centers, though, in particular, are kind of those X factors with Carter and Blueger there, especially Blueger on penalty kills and stuff like that. Having savvy guys like Brian Boyle potentially in the lineup, who's been actually a bright spot this year, also could be nice to have on penalty kill and stuff like that. So I definitely think if they can get production out of the Carters, the Rodriguez of the world, the Kapanens, if he can find a spark, then they can win this series. If they don't, it's going to be real tough and put even more pressure on Crosby and Malkin. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people talk about the season series, the season matchup, and what we saw. And obviously a lot of people look right to the Rangers. I think that kind of adds the fuel to why the Rangers will win this series, right? Mm-hmm. I think I would heavily put the Penguins at advantage up the middle, as you kind of just alluded to, is like you got Crosby, you got Malkin, and you got Carter. Yes, all guys older, but if Carter can be even, I would say 70% of what he was against the Islanders last year, that's a good trio to have up the middle. So for me, this series is so tough. I think, as I said, I keep going, and yeah, you know what? It's kind of lazy to do this, but I always just keep going back to Shesterkin because we could go over 100 million times the different parts of both these teams, but too many times I've seen a goalie steal a series, or too many times I've seen a goalie take things over. And for me, the absolute difference maker is Shesterkin here. I think if Shesterkin plays to the level, and if the Rangers, I mean, they have a real opportunity here. I mean, at the end of the day, no Jarry in the first couple of games, potentially. If Shesterkin is at his level in New York, 2 home games for the Rangers, like that's such an opportunity to take both those games and go up 2-0. So that would be tough for the Penguins to get back into. And I think that's the opportunity for the Rangers. So Mitch, I know you kind of started off with this video to now go close it out on the side of how do you see it going down? Is there like a certain scenario where the Penguins just stink it up and the Rangers absolutely dominate? Or is there a scenario where the Penguins take this over? Or do you think just regardless, this is a 7-game series to be ready for?
I don't know about the games. I think that this series is going to be really tight, no matter how many games are played. I think this is the type of series where it's 2-1, 3-2. And you got to make those opportunities, the limited amounts that you get. It's going to be very tight hockey, not a lot of great opportunities back and forth. So you're going to have to make those opportunities count, which means your power play has to make it count. When you get a chance in close, you got to make it count. And Penguins haven't been able to do that. They've also struggled in transition over the last couple of playoffs, which has really hurt them. So if they can slow down that game and execute on the power play, they've got an opportunity to take this one. I believe in them. I believe you never bet against Sidney Crosby, in my opinion. You never bet against this core of players, but I do look at the Rangers as the better, deeper, more talented team. They've got fresher legs. I do like their defense. I do like their goaltending, as you brought up. So I would go with the Rangers if I were to bet on it. And I would say it's probably going to be about 6 games. It's probably 6 games, but I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever if the Penguins, as a veteran team, take hold of that underdog narrative, as we've seen so many times in sports before, and they ride that for one last run. So I wouldn't say it's impossible for the Penguins to win here, but they're going to have better play from some of the players that have disappointed, like we've brought up with Rodriguez, with Kapanen, with guys like Marino and as well Pettersson. They're going to have to play better on defense, forwards, to win this series, but they certainly have the skill and the capacity to do it.
Yeah. And to build off what you said, I have basically 3 points here. One being, I think if the Penguins were to win the series, based on what we've already talked about, like Jarry being out a couple of games and already being behind in terms of home ice advantage, like I think MSG is going to be absolutely rocking. So it's going to be tough to pull games there, but who knows? So I think if the Penguins win the series, I would most likely think it's 7 if the Penguins win. But 2, I think the Rangers have the potential, or the higher potential, I'll say, in winning the series sooner than the Penguins do. So just kind of building off what I just said. I just think, as I said, Shesterkin, the home ice, all of that into play. And then, I mean, the Rangers, I was kind of looking at the roster. I don't think they actually have, outside of like Sammy Blais, who was ruled out for the year, like way before. And then I think like Tyler Mott's out right now. But like outside of that, the Rangers are mostly healthy. So I think, I mean, both teams, the Penguins are not like, they don't have bad injuries outside of like Jarry's out for a couple of games, but Zucker obviously out. So I think we'll see. But I think my final point on that is I look at the Pittsburgh Penguins for this year and what we've talked about the last few years. If they get knocked out in the first round again, you would have to expect big changes, right? You would have to expect big things to happen in the offseason. So that's the point I'll make on this series to kind of close it out, is like the Rangers have so much time, right? The New York Rangers get booted out of the first round here. They're still confident in their future. They're still confident in everything they have building here. The Penguins are in such a different circumstance right now that if they get knocked out in the first round again, expect big changes in the offseason, or expect big things to happen for the Penguins. So Mitch, any last kind of thoughts on this series, or last thoughts on what to see for this Penguins Rangers matchup?
You are totally right about the Penguins and their status right now, though, because they also, you have to take into account, kind of have a sort of new regime as well.
Yeah.
So they're not really tied to a lot of these legacy players as well. Rust free agent, Letang free agent, Malkin free agent. So they'll decide who they want to keep and who they want to let go there. Obviously, Crosby's sticking around, but there should be a new influence of young talent if this team cannot go far in the playoffs, and are definitely, if they're eliminated in the first round, there should be a look at the future for sure, at least the immediate future. So my final thoughts, Penguins fans, have faith. Don't be down on yourself. Yes, we are the underdogs, but embrace it. And I'll say this, I think just the fact that this team has lost so many years in a row, I think it's 3 or 4 years in a row in the first round since whatever, I think they're going to come out with some energy and some fire. And my hope is that they were kind of gliding at the end of the year and they're ready to rev it up for the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Pens. My final take, I'll just go on the Rangers side of things. Rangers fans, even if it's not this year, whatever happens going forward, you should be excited. I mean,
yeah, they're good.
I think, the Rangers have a bright future coming here. And I mean, the future's starting now, obviously. I also will say, because we didn't talk about it as much maybe as we should have, but obviously Chris Letang could be a big difference maker, but obviously one of the, he's not even up and coming anymore. He's arrived. Adam Fox could be a huge difference maker in this series. I think when we talk about defensemen in the playoffs, we talk about Cale Makar a lot. Adam Fox is right there. So if we're talking about defensemen to hopefully show up now in the playoffs, because we've seen a lot of, or at least a couple now, great seasons from him, Adam Fox, I'm looking out for him to have potentially a big series. So thanks, Mitch, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see what happens in this Penguins Rangers series.
Go Pens.